All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Dana Torgerson here. We're at Malwarebytes headquarters. Today we're going to be talking to you folks about the 2017 State of Malware report that came out just last month, and it includes data from around the globe. I want to introduce, starting off here, Adam Kujawa. Adam Kujawa is our Director of Malware Intelligence here with Malwarebytes, and now a current resident of California too. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Adam, and I'll have you take it from here, Adam.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dana. I appreciate that. So, as Dana said, I'm Adam Kujawa, Director of Malware Intelligence at Malwarebytes Labs. I've got over 10 years of experience fighting on the front lines and behind the scenes against all kinds of threats. I'm frequently quoted and published in numerous publications, and have done work for both the private industry as well as working for the government for a little while. If you want, you can follow me on Twitter at Kujman5000. And that's enough of the bio. So let's get into the meat of this thing. The first thing that we want to talk about when talking about this report is that ransomware was obviously a huge deal in 2016. It completely dominated 2016. And during the year, we saw over 400 new variants of ransomware, different families, different versions of families we've already seen. And if you look here on the screenshot to the right, you'll see some stats from January 2016 to November 2016. There was actually a 267% increase in how much ransomware was being distributed through exploit kits and mouse spam, phishing attacks between those two periods. So you can see right here just basically saying, yes, ransomware is a huge deal. Yes, all the bad guys decided to start using it, and we saw it all over the place. And that's really not going to change, but we're going to talk more about that later. Some of the reasons that ransomware actually did become so popular and grow was because of things like ransomware as a service. And basically, if you're familiar with the as a service trend, I guess, of calling things, ransomware is no different. On the dark net, in the black markets, we see lots of ads for, hey, I can create my own ransomware, or I can create ransomware for you and customize it for your needs, and you just pay me money. So it doesn't really require any kind of, technical knowledge or capabilities. Basically go on the dark web, look for a forum post where someone's selling their ransomware and say, yeah, I'd like to buy some of that. Give some money and suddenly you've got your own custom-made ransomware. This kind of reflects what we see overall in the threat landscape and with the black market underground of cybercrime, in that things like distribution of the malware can be purchased, cryptors, and the ability to obfuscate the malware so it's not detected by antivirus security software. All that stuff you could buy on the underground, so it makes it very easy. Speaking of easy stuff, the ease of use of ransomware is really a big contributing factor too. Unlike other types of malware, where you would have to rather have some technical knowledge, but also be able to extract data from their victims and take that data, like credit card information or passwords or whatever, and sell that on the black market in bulk, try to get some money off of that. These days, it's not really the case. With ransomware, you basically you infect your victim, the victim's files get encrypted, and then from that point, the victim either pays you or they don't. But more often than not, it seems these days, you're going to get paid. There's no middleman. There's no taking data and trying to sell it somewhere else. It's direct. So that's a really, really great reason why ransomware has become such a big problem. So our report does talk about things like where have we seen ransomware detections. And number one, United States, obviously. The Western world is heavily targeted by ransomware, and not just the Western world, but also the English-speaking Western world, because Australia is down there as our number 6 most infected with ransomware country. We also have Germany, Italy, the UK, things like that. So this may or may not give you some idea of where these attacks might be coming from, but regardless, the victims are people in the Western world, primarily. So last year, there was basically three big names in ransomware that everybody should have heard about, and if you hadn't, well, you're going to hear about it now. TeslaCrypt, Locky, and Cerber. You can see this chart, and this is actually a chart from our honeypots showing the distribution trends between these ransomware families. The red line there is TeslaCrypt, and around May or June, TeslaCrypt went down. It went completely down. It shut down their operations, and they released their master key to the whole world, saying, hey, we're sorry about that. Go ahead and decrypt all your stuff. Once TeslaCrypt went down, which was the most heavily distributed ransomware at the time, Locky and Cerber kind of took over and started going back and forth with how much they're being distributed. Now, both of these ransomware families are, in some sense, still active. Cerber is definitely still active, the same as what we saw last year. Locky has made a few changes, is in kind of being run by different groups now and modified. But either way, they both utilize high levels of military-grade encryption, so AES. They both will avoid targeting like Russian countries or Russian-adjacent countries. They both can start encrypting files without actually needing to reach out to the command and control server, and this was something that in the early days of encrypting ransomware, at least the modern encrypting ransomware, we saw that the ransomware basically having to reach out to the command and control, say, hey, I'm alive, can I go ahead and encrypt stuff, get a response, and then they can start their operations. That's no longer the case. It's not a problem for Cerber and Locky who just go ahead and start encrypting things without asking. So, as far as targets go, as far as who is being targeted, not just by country necessarily, 81% of ransomware detected on corporate environments occurred in North America, and this is actually really interesting that so many businesses are targeted here in the States and in Canada and just North America in general. While we take a look at the 51% of home consumer detections happening in Europe. So for some reason, home users are more susceptible to getting hit with ransomware infections in Europe than in the United States. Moving away from ransomware for a second, I want to talk about ad fraud malware, and specifically the Copter malware. Now, Copter is basically been used for ad fraud operations. You might also know it as click fraud, where basically the system is hijacked and then utilized to view and click and things like that on advertisements. And the people that control these advertisements, or at least get the commission for views of the advertisements, are usually the criminal or related to the criminal in some way. So that's another way of getting paid directly. But the thing about this malware is not what it's been doing the last year or so, but what it could potentially do and what we saw it doing even before then. So Copter can install filelessly. And what that means is basically most malware will have an actual executable file living on the system, stored somewhere, trying to hide, and a lot of security products go after that particular file. They look for a physical file in the system and try to remove it. Copter doesn't have this file, so that kind of protection mechanism that's employed by a lot of AV vendors is kind of useless. Copter instead creates a hidden unique registry key where it stores basically a script to execute the malware, to download and execute the malware every time the system reboots. It also includes things like anti-security software capability. So if it detects that you're running a certain kind of antivirus, or there are certain things going on with the Windows, certain settings that make it more secure, Copter will disable those settings. Copter will disable any security software you might be running and basically make way for any additional malware it might want to install. In addition to that, Copter can also not only distribute additional malware like ransomware, it can actually act as ransomware itself, and we've observed that in the past, taking over the system, encrypting files, saying, hey, you need to pay up. We've seen just a lot of this particular malware all over the place. When ransomware wasn't the #1 distributed malware, Copter was. And that makes us all really concerned by how much of this is being spread and also the capabilities it has, meaning that one day if the people behind this particular malware decide, hey, I don't want to do ad fraud stuff anymore, I want to start ransoming people, I want to download additional malware or something even more nefarious, it's just a flip of the switch and they can do it. So as far as where Cofter is, unfortunately, it's mostly in the United States. It's been the campaigns to distribute this malware through exploits and primarily over the last few months anyway, through malicious spam and phishing attacks, target United States people. And while we do see it in other countries a little bit here and there, it's obvious that they were going after Americans. So talking about malware distribution, there have actually been a lot of interesting developments and evolutions over the last year in things like mouse spam and phishing. And so for those of you who don't know, phishing usually refers to just having a link inside of an email, the email itself trying to pretend to be a legitimate email from your bank or from a friend or something like that, FedEx, PayPal. And with the link, you click on the link, it takes you to a page that looks exactly like the login page for a service you use, and you type in your credentials, and the bad guys steal that and log into your account. Mouse spam takes that aspect of phishing where they're just trying to be someone else, trying to pretend to be something legitimate, and instead of having a link that takes you to a page where you give your credentials, they either give you a link or they attach a file to the email itself. That email or that file usually downloads malware and installs it on the system. So what we've seen different, while in the past, oftentimes mouse spam would just attach the malware itself to, or an infected document or something like that to the email. But those things get caught a lot these days by email scanners, and I mean, that's fantastic. So what they started to do instead was to just attach scripts. So .js files, .windows scripting files, things like that. They put those scripts inside of the email attachment. Same social engineering tactics apply here, where the email itself pretends to be something legitimate. A user clicks it, opens it, it runs the script, downloads the malware, installs it on the system. They've also started using zip files. Now, this is a method utilized to defeat kind of automatic analysis systems and sandboxes, while you can bring in a lot of emails and mouse spam that to try and analyze it automatically. It would usually extract the attachment and then run the attachment to get whatever payload is trying to be dropped. With the zip files, these are password-protected zip files, and that means that even if we were to extract the zip from the email, opening it up is another story. Getting to the actual malware is a difficult part, and the password for the zip file is within the email usually. So, like I said, this is a method to try and hide the malware from scanners, but also try to defeat automatic analysis of mouse spam emails. Finally, macros are back. So any of you who have been in the industry for a while or have kept up with it know that many years ago we used to have a big problem with Office macros. That they would be these scripts that basically are attached to Office documents like Word documents or Excel spreadsheets. And once the documents were opened up, it would execute the script, it would download the malware, et cetera, et cetera. They're back now, and this time it's a little different, though. This time, the bad guys have put a lot of effort into making the documents these things are attached to look very, very legitimate. You can see from the screenshot here that this is actually a mouse spam email. If the user was to click on Enable Edit, it would run a script to download malware and infect them. But we see things like this. This document is protected. You can't view it unless you enable editing. We've also seen things like this document was created with a different version of Word or of Excel or whatever. So click on the yellow button at the top in order to view it in compatibility mode. So we've seen all kinds of stuff like that in the past and recently. And we expect to see even more developments of the malware distribution methods through this particular avenue. To talk just overall about malware attacks and how big of a problem they are, malware itself, overall detections from our stats, the United States, massive infection. It's the most infected country in the world by our stats. Europe is, however, the most infected continent. The hardest hit countries are France, United Kingdom, and Spain. So let's move on to predictions now. Basically, ransomware, what are we going to see in 2017, or what are we going to see right now, I guess? It's unlikely we're going to see just a flood of sophisticated families, but we're already a few months in, and I can tell you we've seen a couple of them, and we can definitely expect to see more from them moving forward. But just looking at the stats from last year, 60% of ransomware variants were less than a year old. That basically means that this stuff's being developed quickly, it's being deployed quickly, and it's also being shut down quickly. So we're going to see a lot of different families moving out this year, just like we did last year. A lot of big names showing up, a lot of little names, but overall, we won't know until later in the year who exactly is going to be the top dog as far as ransomware. We also expect to see, very possibly, more use of the boot record modification from ransomware. Now, what that is, for you that don't know, is basically when you start up your computer, it automatically reads an RMBR table and says, hey, excuse me, a master boot record table. Hey, what operating system do I run into? How do I start it up? Things like that. With this kind of capability, the malware is going to modify that table or that record and say, when you start the computer, it goes to a custom screen they've created that says you've been encrypted, your computer's been locked, here's how you pay, et cetera, et cetera. We've seen that with a few families last year, like Petya and GoldenEye. We expect to see that some more this year, but we'll see how it goes. As far as malware distribution predictions, exploit kits are likely going to take the reins again. One thing I didn't really mention in the earlier part of this is that exploit kits did take a bit of a drop last year. About halfway through the year, the Angler exploit kit went down, and no exploit kit has yet to really hit the same market share as it had in the past. And we saw an uptick in malicious spam and phishing emails. So we're hoping, or we're thinking, never hoping, but we're thinking that by the mid part of this year, we should see exploit kits kind of take over again. When, like I said before, we expect to see further developments of mouse spam tactics by cyber criminals, more evolutions, more tricks on trying to evade email scanners, on how to trick users into opening attachments, things like that. Finally, Internet of Things is a big topic at the end of last year with the DDoS botnet infecting Internet of Things devices and being used to go after websites and backbones of the Internet like Dyn. We expect that we're probably going to see more of that this year. The beacon has been lit, and all the bad guys are looking at Internet of Things devices. Unfortunately, so many of them are developed without security in mind, and that leads to unsecured devices that need either patching because of vulnerabilities or users not changing default passwords, and that makes them basically perfect for the bad guys to hop in there and use them for nefarious purposes. So, in conclusion, ransomware dominated in 2016, and it's likely going to continue dominating in 2017. We've already, like I said before, we've already seen that. We've seen a couple new families show up. We've seen some modifications in the big players. And at this point, it's still being distributed heavily. So I don't expect that to change at all this year. Ransomware is kind of the go-to for the bad guys. It's not just something that the veterans of cybercrime have decided to invest in, but also all the newcomers as well. So we're going to see not only an increase in its use, or at least a continued high level of its use, but also probably more resources put into evolving their tactics and developing the threat. Copter malware is deceptively dangerous, and as I said before, whenever ransomware wasn't being the most heavily distributed malware at the time, for a particular period of last year, it was Copter. And like I said before, the capabilities it has are far beyond what it's being used for, and that scares me. That keeps me up at night. So you should definitely keep an eye out for it and make sure you're protected. Malware distribution had a really great year, as I said before. They've continued to develop their methods of infecting people through mouse spam, through phishing, through exploits. And as far as 2017, as far as this year, we expect to see the same. as well as probably more evolutions and adventuring into other avenues of infection. So maybe utilizing social media a bit more, things like Skype or Facebook Messenger. I'm sure you've heard a little bit about that already this year. And other things that we're not even necessarily aware of yet. Technologies that may not even be released or developed yet could be used by the end of the year to distribute malware. Finally, the Western world is targeted in far greater numbers than anywhere else. And I don't know if that's really a surprise to anybody, but North America and Western European countries are always really heavily targeted by malware, by threats. A lot of these threats come from the Eastern world. I'm not going to say they all do, but a lot of them definitely do. And that's not going to change. I don't see that changing. I mean, at the end of the day, places like the United States, we're a more prosperous country. More people have access to computers, to the internet. More people spend their lives online, either, doing basically everything from banking to communicating with friends and family. So we're a prime target for this kind of stuff. And it's really important that we take reports like this one that we released and what other companies might release as well and heed their warnings and pay attention to the tactics used by the cyber criminals. Because at the end of the day, there's always going to be more and more advancement of security products, and there's also going to be more and more advancement of malware and attacks. So it comes down to the user being able to recognize a potential attack and avoid that as much as possible to help with that and help protect themselves and their friends and family. So with that, that's basically all I've got. I'm going to pass it over to Dana. He's going to tell you a little bit more about Malwarebytes, about what kind of products we have and what we can help you with. Dana?
Oh, gosh. Thanks, Adam. All right. Well, as you can see, let me move the slide here. There we go. So I'm Dana Torgerson, Senior Product Marketing Manager here with Malwarebytes. I bring to the table more than 10 years of information security industry experience working for those great companies, part of my career arc. And here at Malwarebytes, I'm helping businesses and schools and government agencies learn more about how they can protect their endpoints or improve their security posture. And you can follow me out on Twitter at DatoTweet. And Adam, what was that again? Your handle on Twitter is?
Kujman5000.
At Kujman5000, that's right. So with that, let's talk about why Malwarebytes. We put on these webinars. We try to make sure that folks see great thought leadership pieces in this research that our research team and Adam driving this have put together with the State of Malware 2017 report, which is some great data that he just showed us. If you folks have any questions for that, want you to reach out, you can reach out to your sales rep, you can reach out to authorized Malwarebytes reseller, or you can, I think our phone number is actually out on the web there, you can reach that too. But really it starts with the customers. Founded in 2008, we're the cybersecurity company, we're trusted by millions around the world, and businesses and individuals, they're looking to Malwarebytes to detect and remove threats, from their desktops, their laptops, their servers, their mobile devices, and we're extremely effective due to our intelligence. Now, chances are, we've already maybe helped you or your businesses over the years, and you may already be using Malwarebytes even just today. So, what Malwarebytes does is, I mentioned intelligence. We've got what we feel is the best threat intelligence because we're seeing some of the nastiest threats that other solutions miss. That gives us a true first look at the latest threats that businesses are facing. And we take this information and threat telemetry, and we use a human and machine approach to both ways of methodology for research and engineering the threats to understand those threats. And we continuously improve our detection capabilities and our protection technologies. And then we utilize all these technologies in the different products that we build. Now, speaking of incident response, let's consider all the various activities and the players that are involved during a breach, like endpoint incident. So let's take a look at it from the three different perspectives. You've got an attacker attacking an end user computer, and now that end user, once they've breached that machine, of course that end user is going to have degraded endpoint performance. Meanwhile, the security team, they're filled with a whole bunch of activities, ongoing incident response for the detection phase of their incident response. They're sandboxing malware, they're reviewing firewall events, they're reviewing proxy logs, they're going through antivirus logs and endpoint event logs. Then they got to correlate all these different retrieved logs. And when they do that, sure enough, they'll trip across that incident alert. It'll be going off. But at the meantime, just think of all the different activities that attacker is doing to, maintain persistence, reconning other enterprise resources, trying to move laterally, setting up command and control, escalating privileges, compromising credentials, and so on. And that continues to go on, even though now at the same time, the security team is trying to confirm that incident that they got. They're examining the suspected host. They're retrieving malware samples. They're actually going to now try to retrieve that endpoint's memory and its disk and provide forensic evidence and review of that. But the attacker's still there, and now the attacker is actually exposing internal and external credentials. The end user has actually now assisted the attacker to map out the rest of the enterprise landscape. And that end user, that initial, let's call it, breach number one, has actually shared attack vertices with other endpoints. Then the security team, they're still going along their incident response process. Now they're at the investigation phase. They're trying to define the indicator of compromise. They're sweeping the enterprise with that indicator of compromise, maybe an MD5 hash file. They're going to try to now tune and fortify the defenses that they've got, update firewall policies, make sure that they could maybe look for that, look for the IDS, IPS, see if they can retune that, as well as their endpoint protection solutions. They're going to scope for any lateral movement, look for any data exfiltration, and I try to identify compromised credentials. And that leads up right to the end here, where the security team is able to actually then formalize the response, which then becomes the end of the attacker window. This is now when they're going to back up the business data, they're going to wipe and reimage the machine and then the other machines that they've now scoped and found, and then they've got to do the diligence. They've got to notify the compromised data owners. And this goes on, and Malwarebytes actually has a solution that can actually reduce that amount of time that it takes to actually shorten that incident response process and reduce the dwell time of an attack. And we call that, here at Malwarebytes, we call that breach remediation. Very lightweight, powerful, agentless solution that you can use within your enterprise or large-sized business. But this talk of responding to an incident, responding to a breach, it's a bit of a kind of a runaround too. Even we've got this great solution for folks. Other businesses would rather just prevent in the first place. To prevent an attack, though, means that you have to actually understand what that attacker is trying to go through, and that attacker trying to get and to compromise your systems and to escalate privileges and move forward so they can get to the malicious behavior. It really boils down to 5 stages in an attack chain. There's a profiling stage. That's where they're going to enumerate or do recon on your endpoint. They're going to try to identify your operating system, the browser type that you're running. Is it Chrome or is it IE? They're going to be looking for IP addresses. Hey, if it's a Comcast IP address, it's probably residential. If it's not, it most likely it's corporate, and there could be some goodies there. And find out what security is already installed. There's a delivery stage they're going to go through. That's how the attacker is going to get their exploit and their payload onto your endpoint. In the case of ransomware, this is often through email attachments and increasingly via malvertising, malicious advertisements that are actually placed onto legitimate websites within their ad network. Then there's the exploitation stage. I think a lot of folks understand that, and that's when the attacker is trying to exploit your web browser, Adobe Flash, Microsoft Word, like Adam was saying, with those macros being turned on, letting who knows what in, all to be able to deliver and remotely execute the malware payload. Then you move into that 4th stage that an attacker is trying to get through to get to your machine, payload execution stage. That's where the attacker is delivering and executing the malware payload right on the system. But in the case of like a USB thumb drive that somebody picks up out of a parking lot or plugs into to one of their terminals, that attacker has actually begun the attack right at that stage too. What this shows is that it's very important for businesses. We always encourage businesses, love for you to use us, but just make sure that you're addressing each one of these stages of an attack. Make sure that you've got the right technologies in place in these pre-execution stages. Have layers. Some solutions only can protect at one stage. Some of the next-gen solutions that are out there that are gaining in popularity. So what you need to have is this right mix of next-gen signatureless, and signature-based technologies, all working for you, not against you. And if you get to the fifth stage, an attacker trying to get to that malicious behavior stage, well, that's the stage where any or all of their actions are being taken place on the endpoint. It could be stealing the data, propagating the attack, further, wider across the networked endpoints, or in the case of ransomware, encrypting files. So Malwarebytes actually offers, as you're probably guessing, we offer technologies that help to stop an attacker at each one of those stages. At the profiling stage, we have application hardening. That's going to reduce vulnerability surface and proactively detect fingerprinting attempts used by advanced attacks. That's what I was telling you folks about with the performing of the enumeration and the recon to find out what OS or security or your IP address is running. Stage number 2, the delivery stage. Well, our web protection will prevent access to malicious websites, the malicious ad networks, malicious scammer networks, and just generally bad network neighborhoods that you really wouldn't want to be around. Then stage 3, and this is the interesting one too, because pick a flavor of exploit attack. There's so many different ones. So we actually created multiple layers of technologies. Again, these are signatureless technologies to help stop and mitigate those exploits. We've got mitigations to proactively detect and block attempts to abuse vulnerabilities and the attempt to remotely execute shellcode on the machine. We also have application behavior protection, which will prevent apps from infecting the machine. So in the case of Microsoft Word, you would see the behavior of Microsoft Word trying to open up and execute shellcode. That's just bad behavior, and we'll see it as that and stop it. If you find yourself an attacker is trying to move into that fourth stage, or in the case of a USB thumb drive, that's the payload execution stage. So we actually have a couple technologies there too. Payload analysis engine with heuristic and behavioral-based rules. We're identifying entire families of known and relevant malware. And we do this with very lightweight signature lists too. We don't require millions of lines of signatures, 500, 1 gigabyte size databases of signatures. So we're able to do this very, very small file size and low impact to the kernel. We also have in beta right now our machine learning technology. Actually, we've been doing machine learning for about 5 years now. And it's proactively identifying viruses and malware, all without signatures. So that's all the unknown variants that are out there. If for some reason, somehow, an attacker is able to penetrate all these different layers and punch through, and now they've actually executed onto an endpoint of yours in your business, now clearly they're at the malicious behavior stage. Well, if it's a ransomware attack, we actually have this ransomware mitigation technology, this ransomware behavior, continuously monitoring processes and the threads and other spun-off injected threads, looking for ransomware behaviors, continually monitoring. And we do that without signatures too, so we're able to actually see and block unknown ransomware that probably hasn't even been developed yet. To Adam's point, those 400 different micro-variations or polymorphic variations of ransomware that was spiked in 2016, that's exactly why you need to be arming yourselves with layers of technologies just for that. Now, we also have callback protection. That's, again, that'll be blacklisting different IP addresses and bad network neighborhoods where we know that command and control servers are hiding out. And that'll prevent access to CNC servers and other malicious websites. Finally, instant response engine, that's really the bread and butter. That's why millions have been trusting us over the years. We're able to get in there quickly and thoroughly detect and remove infections and all the other associated threat artifacts. And that's because we've found this great mix of both signatures and signatureless technologies at that stage. And all this is delivered, these technologies, again, I keep speaking to about how intelligence drives the technologies and that data drive and the technologies are put into products. The product here at hand is Malwarebytes Endpoint Security. This is our prevention endpoint protection platform solution, to use a Gartner term. Gosh, I feel like I've been talking your ear off here, folks. Adam, this data that you've presented to folks is probably going to generate a whole heap of questions, so I wanted to make sure that we left enough time for some Q&A here. So we'll bring back your microphone here, and we'll start queuing up different questions. And folks, if you want to find your Q&A button within the application, the On24 app, I encourage you to do so. Just quickly type it in there and hit send. Checkbox. Chat. Oh, we're using chat today, folks. Sorry about that. You'll click on the chat button and actually enter in your question there. So we'll just go on mute here for a second, and our facilitator will be able to bring up those questions and share them with Adam and I.
Start reading from the top down.
All right. As long as my computer shows me the list here. All right. Okay, how do you guys... Oh, okay. Does Malwarebytes handle PowerShell threats? Okay. Adam, I'll let you go ahead and take this one.
Hey, all right. Yes, we do. We absolutely do. Our anti-exploit technology can handle PowerShell threats. We see them obviously used a lot within the mal-spam distribution method. So anti-exploit either on its own or cooked in with one of our products as we've been pushing here for a little bit. So this really, helps the understanding the importance of using real-time protection versus just after-the-fact kind of stuff. Because a PowerShell attack will download and install additional malware on your system. And if you're just trying to scan after the fact, you're not going to be able to stop it from getting on there. These days, with things like ransomware, there really is no after-the-fact solution that's really going to keep you protected and keep you safe. So, like I said before, utilizing anti-exploit technology within our products will stop PowerShell attacks.
Cool. Let's see. Do you see an increase in tech scams in 2017? Do you predict, I think is what the gentleman is asking here, do you predict an increase in tech scams in 2017, Adam?
We saw a lot of them in 2016. It's been something we've really been focused on because we know how many people are becoming victims to this, not just customers of Malwarebytes, but people in general. So yeah, we actually do see not necessarily an increase in the amount of tech support scams we'll be seeing in 2017 compared to 2016, but the sophistication behind them and the methods they use are definitely going to be more hardcore than what we saw in 2016. So it's really important. If anyone here has family that may not be overly technical, it might be good to act as yourself, kind of the IT person, and not necessarily to the sense where you have to go to someone's house and fix their computer, but if they have a problem or something like that, you say, hey, this is the right people to reach out to, this is the right support people to reach out to, or in other cases, if they get a cold call or see an ad or something on their screen saying they're infected with malware or saying they're there's something wrong with their operating system, call this number, tell them to avoid that. We actually write a lot about tech support scams on our blog, so you should definitely check those out.
That's true, yeah. If you folks haven't already seen the Malwarebytes Labs blog, you've got to check that out. We've had customers tell us that that's actually such a trusted resource, right up there with their SANS Institute threat feeds. It feels like quite an honor. And actually the blog, I'll do the bragging for Adam. I know he won't. Won the Corporate Blog Stevie Awards for the last 2 years in a row, too. Okay, that's enough bragging. Let's just move on to the next question here. Tell me more about the Dyn attack. So that was an IoT attack. Actually, I could start that one if you want, Adam. Yeah, Dyn attack, for the gentleman asking this question, that was, I believe it was October 21st. It was a Friday. And we actually at Malwarebytes, like many businesses around the globe, use and trust and rely on these other, services, these SaaS-based services. Well, a Mirai malware-based botnet was being hammering on the Dyn.com servers. It was estimated it was 100,000 different devices, primarily made up of DVR systems, closed camera circuit television cameras, as well as printers and also some routers, just all banging away. It had a 1.2 terabit per second attack strength, if I recall, that would be about 1,300 gigabytes of data every second, just sustained over the whole course of the day, just knocking Dine's DNS servers offline and therefore impacting downstream every single provider that relied on that. I mean, you saw CNN was down, Reddit, GitHub, Zendesk, so anybody who's using help desk tickets from the Zendesk ticketing system, which I think we were too, and I believe Salesforce.com, which many businesses run on, all being impacted. And it just really creates this this new normal, I guess, which Adam was getting at too, that these IoT threats just have to be addressed. I mean, yeah, it's tough. How are you going to put an agent onto your Samsung TV at home? We're looking at a Samsung TV right here in our office on the wall, on every wall, it seems. So you could take a page. And I'll let Adam chime in here too. But we've talked to the industry analysts at Forrester. You could take a page from their Zero Trust report recently that came out, where they recommend a microsegmentation approach for your IoT devices. That way, if all your IoT devices were segmented on the network from other core portions of your other endpoints, your next-gen endpoints, then at least you would be able to mitigate the damage of the downstream impact. But Adam, do you have anything else to chime in on Dyn?
I mean, you basically said it all, Data. But yeah, it's been.
Sorry, buddy.
No, it's okay. It shows this really massive vulnerability in not just our software, our hardware, but the infrastructure of our world. Everyone does everything on the internet these days, so it's a problem, and. Not just the internet things, but the fact that we all have this kind of shared backbone. Dyn gets taken down and half the internet goes down because it's what everybody looks to figure out where to go on the internet. Hopefully these things will be fixed in the future. And as Dana was saying before about segmenting IoT devices on corporate networks, I also totally agree. That's a great idea. If you can't control the device itself and know for sure whether or not it's secured, you shouldn't be putting it on the same network where you have, private information or access to things that you don't want bad guys getting access to.
Yeah, it's a scary new norm out there, and folks, we are definitely, you can trust us. We're doing our best to combat this and help you folks out. Now, we've got another question here. Let's see. I don't think he knows. Well, there we go. Are you researching any methods to restore files encrypted by ransomware? Adam?
Yeah. So there's a whole story behind that. We are doing as much research as we can, and then really soon here we're actually going to be releasing a few decryptors for some families of ransomware that we've been researching. The thing is, the problem is that usually a decryptor is only possible when the ransomware itself has a flaw. Either the ransomware has a flaw or the way in which that they're transmitting information back to the command and control server have a flaw, and we look for that flaw and exploit it, and we're able to make a decryptor from that. The big ransomware that's being distributed, so Cerber, your Lockies, things like that, they don't have flaws. They're very well developed, and unfortunately, and their encryptions are rock solid. So we will do what we can to help people that are infected with ransomware that we can decrypt, for sure. And for everybody else, I wish there was a solution, and maybe someday we'll figure it out. But I guarantee you, if we're able to break the encryption utilized by Cerber and Locky, that the world would have a lot more problems than just worrying about getting their files back. So, but yeah, we are researching it, and we're looking into it, just like hopefully the whole industry is.
Cool. That is very cool to hear. Can your product be configured so that my end users won't have to interact with the product, such as update notifications? It seems like he's saying, I would like the product to just run in the background and do its job. And he's describing his role. He's a IT director at a school district. Schools, education, very popular with Malwarebytes. We're going to be appearing at EDUCAUSE coming up later this year. So hopefully folks on the line that are going to be there, we can actually meet up with as many of you as we can. To my knowledge, yeah, inside of the endpoint security solution, which is managed centrally with Management Console, currently at version 1.7. We've got some exciting announcements coming up in a couple of weeks for 1.8. to my knowledge, you can set and silence any of those update notifications. It might be tucked away. Maybe it's not in an intuitive area for you within the UI of the console, but it is there, and you can actually get as granular as not just making it silent, not just suppressing the pop-ups, but being able to actually then, under policy, control exactly where you want that to be. So I encourage you to take a look at our admin guide. We tend to update our administrative guides and put them on our support page, which is open. You don't have to log in to get to our guides like some vendors. We're very transparent here. But we do tend to put out these guides and improvements to the products, and it might go like a ship through the night. You might not actually catch some of that. So I encourage you to go find the Malwarebytes Management Console version 1.7 Administrator Guide, and that is the latest current version. Now, having said that, maybe this gentleman is actually running an earlier version where we didn't have that feature, in which case then we'll have to have a conversation about getting you folks upgraded to the latest version. But great question, product question. Sorry about that, Adam. I stole that away from you. Okay, let me go down the list here, folks. Ooh, I think you'll like this one, Adam. Would you say that many vulnerabilities on computers are due to human error, which means that many employees at offices as well as home users are not educated enough to know the differences between the good and the bad? What say you, sir?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a mix, you know. Certainly, vulnerabilities in software have been a huge issue. Not so much over the last couple of years. It seems like companies like, you know, Adobe and Oracle, who had Java and Flash, things like that, have been updating their software, have kept it relatively secure, and it's no longer one of the primary methods of infection, at least new zero-day exploits for these particular products. But the bad guys are distributing malware still by using these exploits against vulnerabilities that have already been patched, and they're also utilizing heavy amounts of social engineering, tricking people into opening links and downloading malware. So in that sense, there is a sense of human error. You know, unfortunately, cybercrime isn't something you could just take care of in an afternoon and never worry about it again. It should be a constant thing. I think personally that knowing how to spot a phishing email or how to, you know, just keep your personal information safe should be as common knowledge to everyone as knowing to look both ways before crossing the street, knowing not to stick a key into a power outlet or something. All both things that I learned by doing when I was a child, but that proves my point. You know, it's better to protect yourself and know how to protect yourself before you get hit with attacks, rather than after. Unfortunately, that's usually how it works. Whereas a lot of people learn a lot about cybercrime, a lot about security after they've already been hit with something like ransomware. So human error is certainly involved in it, but you know, education is a really important initiative. We try to educate people with the blog. You know, we try to do whatever we can to teach people about these threats. And unfortunately, some people don't want to listen, and that probably puts everyone else in danger too. So I recommend just spreading whatever information you hear. If you see a blog post that looks good, if you see something on Facebook or Twitter that shares some good information, share it with all the people you know, and hopefully somebody will read it and learn something and take something away from it.
Cool. See, I'll take this one here. Can Malwarebytes Endpoint, and I think what they're saying is the Malwarebytes Endpoint Security product, which is our protection product, can it also run concurrently with Semantic Endpoint Protection? Good question. We actually built our solutions for the ground up when we originally designed them to actually be compatible with all other security software solutions that are out there. So the answer to that question is yes. And in fact, that particular product that the gentleman was asking is we've actually got compatibility certification on that, and you can find that on our website or contact support if you want to learn more information about what exact versions. But that's kind of that story's kind of getting old too, because you know, more and more we've been hearing, and now with all these layers of technology that we've got, we're actually an antivirus replacement offering, and we're an antivirus replacement company now. So we're actually out there working with customers who love the fact that they can take their antivirus budget that they've been spending all these years, 3 years at a time, renewal, for these traditional solutions that aren't working for them, that are letting these threats still get through. That then Malwarebytes is called in like the troops being deployed to go and find the threats and scan for those threats. And sure enough, we find these threats. We've got, like I was saying earlier for Adam, the best threat researchers, the best techniques, both human and machine, combined together. You just can't put all your eggs in one basket. We've got this great portfolio, a technology portfolio, I guess is probably the best way to say it. So you really don't need to keep, running two different solutions like that. You can if you'd like, but you don't necessarily have to. But yes, to answer the question directly, yes, it absolutely will run concurrently with semantic endpoint protection. And there's documents on our support site to show you if there's any exceptions that you might want to set up to on theirs or on ours to make sure that that holds true to that. Let's see. We've also got, earlier it was mentioned that most of the attacks were on North America and on the Europe continent. Where are these attacks coming from, Adam? Where are they coming from? The United States itself?
Well, let me tell you right now that attribution, meaning figuring out who is doing the attacking, is almost impossible these days. Usually criminals have to make a massive mistake and make themselves known to the world in order to be caught in the first place. We see there's a lot of industry in Eastern Europe and in that area that supports cybercrime, not necessarily openly supports it like with banners and flags, cyber criminals, welcome here, but more like, being able to host things like bulletproof hosting, which means is a service that cyber criminals utilize so that they can host command and control servers. They're very difficult to take down by law enforcement. Law enforcement itself in these areas is more lax. They don't really necessarily go after criminals who are targeting external people or external victims, so anyone in the U.S. or in Western Europe. However, if they make the mistake of going after people from their own country, then they usually get caught. So does it happen from the U.S.? Sure. I guarantee you there are plenty of cyber criminals living in the United States that do attacks against other people in the United States, and hopefully the FBI will catch them. But there are also lots of people in Europe, just all over the world. We got China, South America, Africa. I mean, just all over the place. Cyber criminals are everywhere, and saying that there's a particular area where they just tend to congregate and tend to come from is kind of missing the point. It's not true necessarily. Like I said, a lot of framework, a lot of resources available in Eastern Europe because of the lax laws and the capabilities that cyber criminals utilize, which certainly make it appear that a lot of these attacks come from that part of the world. But I'm pretty sure they come from everywhere. And like I said, attribution is really hard to do. Anonymizing yourself and your activities is super easy these days, which is great, but also double-edged sword.
Well, let's see if we can cut right to this question then. Yeah, double-edged sword, was that good? Okay, well, can you talk a little more about breach remediation and what it is? So as the product guy, I guess I can take that one for us. Breach remediation, folks, basically, there was such a demand from businesses, a lot of large-sized businesses and enterprise-sized businesses that said they loved our tool. Just please get rid of the user interface. Make it lightweight. Make it agentless. Make it headless. And we did. We did just that. That's what breach remediation is. It's very lightweight, very quickly able to install. Installed using your existing endpoint management tools that you probably already have in your office or in your workspace or at your business, like Microsoft SCCM or Tanium or Forescout or McAfee EPO, and use that to deploy and get it onto some, many, or all of your endpoints. We've got customers that like to go use breach remediation and deploy it silently in the background onto users' computers and proactively scan for threats, hunt for threats, using custom indicators of compromise that they picked up maybe from their SIM, that the SIM saw from an IPS or IDS or from a firewall, and then go looking for that. All the engineering machines on a Monday, going hitting marketing and sales on a Tuesday, and so forth. And they just keep round-robining through, always looking for threats and always being vigilant. when breach remediation is installed and is scripted, however you want to do it, to get that script to run, then it'll scan for threats. And when it detects it, it can quarantine it or remove it directly right away for you and just be done with it. And then send all the resolution details and information right back to your SIM. Because, your SIM like ArcSight or Splunk, where many of you probably live and breathe all day long. So now you can actually start to get and achieve security automation levels by actually working with your SIM. Great story coming up that we're going to be talking about soon on an upcoming webinar, I'm guessing, is going to be on Forescout and how we can integrate with Forescout. So look for that announcement coming up too. That is breach remediation in a nutshell. One thing I want to point out, though, is that breach remediation doesn't have those signatureless technologies, though. It's not actually looking for exploits. It's not actually looking for ransomware behaviors. So if you want to prevent and stop something in the first place, then I would encourage you to look at the endpoint security solution, which is just that kitchen sink of our technologies, all working together to stop at every stage of an attack chain. Okay. Now, we also want to take a question out from Twitter, folks, and we appreciate for all of you listeners out there that have been following our social media person, I guess Maven, Lily Sela. Here's a question from Twitter. Do you think we will see less decryptable ransomware this year? Adam, I think this is right up your way. Do you think we'll see less decryptable ransomware this year?
Well, that's another hard one to say, for sure. We saw a lot of copycats last year, and when I talk about copycats, I'm talking about stuff that was kind of thrown together quickly that might have just taken the original source code and modified it slightly, but regardless, ended up with lots and lots of potential exploitable ransomware that we could use, that we could create decryptors for. In 2017, I don't see that flow of copycats and new challengers entering the fray slowing down. So I guarantee you there will be more and more ransomware out there, and a lot of it should hopefully be written poorly so that we can create decryptors for it and help people who are infected. But we're also expecting that the lessons learned from last year will be deployed this year by the people that already have campaigns, the Cerbers, the Lockies, things like that. Spora, that's a new ransomware family we've been seeing a lot of, and basically all the mistakes of the past are going to be fixed. So we're going to see more big players, not just a ton of them, but we're definitely going to see more of them this year than we did last year, and with that comes lots of copycats, and with that becomes more and more decryptable ransomware. So cross your fingers, that's what happens. Hopefully no cyber criminals are listening to me right now and saying, nope, we were going to do that, but now we're going to do it anymore. So, but yeah, that's basically it. I hope that answered your question. Cool.
Well, I just want to help out one other group here. We've got a university out of the Midwest, and they're wondering about where would I find deployment manuals for remediation software. There's some other ones that are asking that similar type of question, and since I touched on it before, I wanted to be fair and say exactly where you folks can go to. You can go to www.malwarebytes.com/support/guides. And then you'll be greeted with both our consumer product guides and our business product guides. And under the business guides, you will spot a section for Malwarebytes breach remediation guides. We've got a guide for the Windows admin guide. Also, our forensic timeliner. I didn't get to touch on that, folks. We actually have a forensic timeliner tool that gathers evidence and data from about 24 different repositories of log areas within Windows machines and reorganizes it down to the millisecond in a timeline view so you can understand who, where, what, and why, what happened. Great extra tool for forensic investigators and incident responders. Also, we have our Malwarebytes breach remediation Mac version, too. Admin guide for that. We have two versions of the breach remediation for Mac, a UI-based and also command line interface-based. So with that, folks, this has been a great chance to talk to you all and reach out. We want to encourage you. It's on the screen still. Learn more at malwarebytes.com. Check out our latest news, like Adam was saying, at blog.malwarebytes.com. And if you if you haven't actually tried this, and I wish I could take a poll right now. We didn't set this up, but I have a sense that about 90% of you folks would say that you've actually already have tried and used and loved Malwarebytes. But if you haven't yet, go to malwarebytes.com/business/licensing and take a look there. With that, we also want to make sure that this has been recorded, and you'll be able to watch a replay of this webcast on our sites under our webinar section under resources. So I encourage you to look at that. Here in West Coast, folks, it's 12 o'clock. It's time for lunch. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.